All right. Looks like everyone is in from the waiting room is connected to sound. So I'll turn things over to you, Tess, but if any of you have questions, feel free to post them in the chat, raise your hand, come off mute. It's a pretty casual session. So yeah, appreciate y'all being here. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we are recording this session so we can share out the link afterwards, or if you have to log off early or something, we'll share that out.
And I do think so. My name is Tessa Pranat. I'm with the Bloch Career Center here at UMKC. I do want to say this probably isn't going to go a full hour. Perfecting your pitches, pitches are short, so perfecting your pitch should be a shorter experience also. So let me just approve that I'm okay with us recording it. I have my usual spiel. What do we do for you here at the Bloch Career Center? And so we're here to help you with wherever you're at. If you're looking for an internship, if you're looking for a new job, looking for a promotion, looking to get into grad school, further grad school, just let us know. We're here to help. And one of the easiest ways to get in touch with us or find out about different types of programming that we offer is to go to Handshake and you just sign in with your SSO. So now that I've done my plug for that. So let's talk about elevator pitches, because most people hate these, and with good reason. And so typically, the idea is that these are this speech about myself, and it's really awkward, and I feel so stupid, and who would want to hear it, and why would I do this? Or that it's this sales spiel about ourselves. And really, most people think it sounds really fake, this idea that you would talk about yourself in this canned sort of presentation for anywhere between 20 seconds and some people say up to a minute. So I think that that's what a lot of people's perception of what a elevator pitch is, and yet really that's not what it's supposed to be. And I really get frustrated with so many people still teach it as this is what you should be doing. You should be writing up this sort of speech about yourself and then memorizing it and then presenting this at various opportunities. And I don't think that that's actually what the whole intention is, because really what that elevator pitch is an intentional introduction. And it's in smaller print, but it's actually the more important piece of this. It's a start of a conversation. And so you shouldn't be thinking about this as this is my speech about me, as much as there are certain things that I really want to do to make a good impression, to get information across. So I'm going to be intentional. But my point is to get a conversation back and forth going. So it's not 20 seconds of just you getting all this information out as quickly as possible. And the good thing is you guys are already doing this. Everybody does this all the time. So you go to a family gathering at Thanksgiving and your Uncle Bob comes up and says, "Hey, what are you up to these days?" And how you respond is your elevator pitch. And it's very tailored to that family gathering. And so you're probably going to tell them, I'm got my job as an engineer at Black & Veatch. It's really going well. I'm wrapping up my MBA as a part-time MBA student at UMKC, and it's been a really great experience, but I'm looking forward to having all the homework and assignments behind me. So you're giving information, an update about you, you're tailoring it to the audience, so you're probably not going to tell Uncle Bob, the best thing about going to grad school is those study nights with my team and we go and have some beer. You present a different view than if it was your best friend and you were talking to them. Or if you're, say, going to a class reunion, which, you know, most of us, when we go to our class reunions, we want to make it seem like we've been pretty successful and we've kind of gotten our lives together since we graduated. So again, you're going to tailor that response. It's not probably going to look exactly like the response that you give to Uncle Bob at Thanksgiving, nor would it look exactly like what you would do in a job interview or a networking event. But you're intentional, you're thinking about what is the image that I want to portray to this person in this circumstance. And that's really, really what an elevator pitch is. So when you think about doing it in a more professional setting, it's really just tailoring that experience that you're already familiar with. And so there's lots of opportunities to use this elevator pitch. And in case you don't know, the idea of and why it's called an elevator pitch is because it's the conversation that would be roughly the length of taking an elevator ride with somebody. But again, even in an elevator, it wouldn't be all about you. It should be a conversation. But anyway, so you can use this, and your elevator pitch is really the perfect way to answer that just super common interview question of, tell me about yourself. It's also a good way to start an email to somebody if you want to set up an informational interview. And an informational interview is really where you just want to set up some time to chat with somebody in a profession that you're interested in, perhaps an organization that you're interested in, learning more about what they do or what the company or organization is like. So when you set up that email to invite them to chat with you, oftentimes that looks pretty much like your elevator pitch. And then when you do actually sit down and meet with them, the start of that conversation again looks much like an elevator pitch. It also oftentimes resembles what you write in the about section on your LinkedIn profile. Or I think a lot of us, when we think of elevator pitches, we think of it in terms of that introduction that you would use at a networking event, one of these professional mixers that sometimes you get forced into going to. But it's also that great random preparation for random conversations. The person that's sitting next to you on the airplane, the person maybe that you're standing in line next to. So you just wind up in these random conversations. And again, it's nice to be able to think about how is it that I really want to portray myself, brand myself basically in these conversations. So I really do think it's rethinking what that elevator pitch is. It's the start of a conversation. It's an intentional introduction and thinking about how you can use it and adapt it. So the must-haves in an elevator pitch sort of introduction is your name. You really do want to let people know who you are. And I think it's also important to include what your current role is in that, whether that's your job title, whether that's your status as a student, if you're not working or a student, whatever your status is, sort of what your hook, what your connection is. And then the next part is kind of what do you want them to know about you? And we'll get to that in a second. But then the final part is an interest in them, because this is the start of that conversation. So that once you've said, my name is Tess Surprenant, I'm the director at the Bloch School, and I'd really love to learn about what your job is, and see if maybe there's some ways we can get you connected with our students. Then my hook is, tell me a little bit more about what you do, tell me about your role. It's that point of getting them involved in that conversation with you.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Will you go back to the previous slide?
I will.
So for number 3, what you want them to know, sometimes I struggle with this because I don't know what they want to know about me. And I find myself either feeling like I share too much and that I wasn't even asked a question, or that I don't share enough because, again, I don't know exactly what they want to know. And so I just show more interest in them rather than sharing like a tidbit. So can you elaborate on number 3?
Yeah, and it's a nice segue to the very next thing we're going to talk about. So, but I will say also that the generally in networking, if you can get them talking, you're doing really well. So there's been studies that have been done on in conversations and interactions. And I remember reading one that said that in a conversation between two people, the person who did the most talking is the person who walks away from that conversation thinking it was a really good conversation, because we love to talk about ourselves. So if you're trying to make a really good impression with somebody, getting them to talk about themselves, they'll probably walk away thinking, wow, she was really an interesting person. That I'm so glad we had that conversation. And you very likely didn't even have to say anything. So it's not all bad, but let's talk about what it is that you want them to know, and how do you figure that out? So what do you want them to know? It depends. My favorite answer to everything. So it does need to be tailored to every conversation. And this is why I really don't like the idea of this canned, memorized 30-second speech about yourself, because it's not going to be relevant to everybody. Just as your conversation with Uncle Bob is not going to be the same conversation that you're going to have with somebody at your reunion is not going to be the same response that you would give to the tell me about yourself question. It needs to be tailored to the individual that you're talking to. And so now you can do things that help you prepare ahead of time. So what is it that you know about yourself? What is it that if you're having a casual conversation that you think is an interesting thing about you that maybe you could share? If you're going and preparing for an interview, you know what the job description is, you know what the organization is, you can do some research on what the culture of the company is. You might look up these specific people that you're interviewing with on LinkedIn to find out if there's any sort of commonalities or specifics that they've mentioned in their profile that are interesting. And thus you can start to tailor what you think are the interesting things about you that would be relevant to this conversation. But then, sometimes this is just a little bit of soul searching, because, if you're preparing for random conversations and you have no idea who's going to be sitting next to you on an airplane, it is good to know, what are some of the things that I'm really proud of? Why did I go into my MBA program or my accounting program? What are the things that really drove me to make that decision at this point in my career? What is it that I like about my current job? What is it that I'm really good at my current job? What are some of the projects that I have been most proud of over the years? So start kind of keeping a mental list of, or maybe a written down list of some of these things, so that they're a little bit more top of mind and ready for whatever circumstance that you find yourself in. And I think that oftentimes we get so busy that we don't do some of this reflection of, I've been so bogged down in the politics of work and, getting my team back together after COVID and, juggling class and assignments and jobs and everything else, that I haven't actually thought about what it is that I want in my next opportunity, what it is that I'm so good at, I'm so proud of. But it really is a very valuable exercise to start really thinking about those things. And some of them are going to be professional things, and some of them are going to be personal things, and some of them are going to be academic things. So just kind of go nuts, make a big list. And then once you have that list, that's when you can start really tailoring it and figuring out, okay, so whatever situation I find myself, how do I pick and choose those bullet points that I think are going to be most interesting in this situation. And I've got a couple examples. Okay, so in my general formula, before I get to my exam, my general formula for how to present this and how to sort of structure the conversation is your current status plus your interest and experience leads you to be excited about the job, about the conversation, about meeting this person, about whatever it is that you're hoping will be the outcome of this conversation. So it's going to vary, but it's a good sort of framework to think about and kind of keep you on task and away from rambling on forever. So let's look at a couple examples. So I used myself as an example. So if I were in an interview and I chose Handshake. Handshake is the software platform that we use. And so if I were going to change careers and I wanted to pursue a career and interviewing for a job as an account executive with Handshake, I might say something like this in response to that question, tell me about yourself. My name is Tess Surprenant. I'm currently the director of the Bloch Career Center at the University of Missouri's Bloch School of Management. Helping students achieve their career and professional goals is something that I have been really passionate about. I started my career, however, in sales and marketing, and all of those ideas and concepts of expanding markets and growing business and achieving new goals is something that's just so baked into me that it's how I approach every job, including my current job. And it's also what makes me really excited about this position as the account executive at Handshake. And I know that you guys and your whole philosophy is really centered around helping students achieve their goals. And then, of course, account executives are really engaged in that marketing and selling. I'm really excited to be here and having this conversation. I'd love to learn more about the role and what your expectations are. So it's that tying in what my job is, what my experience is, what I'm passionate about, why I'm excited to be here having that conversation. So if we take it to another situation, so now I'm at a networking event, it's still me, it's still all the same qualities, but now I'm maybe having some random conversation with somebody at this networking event. I happen to see on their name tag they're with Black & Veatch. So I go up to them, even though I'm an introvert and I have a hard time at these events, but I go out there, shake hands and say, hi, I'm Tess Surprenant. I'm with the University of Missouri's Bloch School of Management. I see you're with Black & Veatch. What do you do there? Get them talking, they respond, and then I can say, oh, that's so interesting. I actually run the Career Center at the Bloch School, and one of our fastest growing majors is our supply chain management major. And, we've got students interested in this. We're looking to do some more programming. I'd love to chat with you a little more about what you do. Maybe we can actually get you connected with some of our students. Can I get your contact information? So again, I'm introducing myself, I'm being intentional, I'm picking out those pieces of my past, my experience, my passions, and really tailoring them to that conversation. I wouldn't have the same, if I'm talking to the guy at Black & Veatch, I'm not going to be starting out. I'm not going to tell him all of the things that I did in my Handshake interview. Because it's not relevant to him. So I'm going to I'm going to start that conversation. I'm going to play off of what he says, but I'm still being intentional and I'm still kind of working towards an outcome. I'm at a networking event. I'm hoping to meet some contacts. I'm always looking for people that I can get connected here on campus. So it's still an elevator pitch, but it's completely different in how it looks and how it's being structured and the pieces I'm pulling out. Now, if I'm in an informational interview, I don't know if anyone here was at the session yesterday with the KC-ADC and Danielle Hilton. But if I were setting up an informational interview with Danielle, and I'm really interested in what Team KC and KC-ADC is all about, I might say, as we start that meeting, hello, Danielle, thanks so much for making the time to chat with me. You know, as the director of the Career Center, I'm really passionate about developing talent for the Kansas City market. And I'm really interested in learnings about some of what Team KC is working on. And maybe we can find some ways that we can partner. You're new in your role. Tell me, how's it going? What are you working on? And then based on what she says, I can say, you know, that's really interesting. Tell me a little bit more about that. And then based on what she says, follow up with, you know, I think that it really reminds me of some of the programming that we're working on ourselves. And I think there's great ways that we could combine those and start working together and then carry on the conversation. Again, it's still an elevator pitch. It's just completely different focus because Danielle's different than the networking event, different than the job interview. So that's why I think that framework of your current status plus your interests and your passions leads you to be excited about whatever is a really good and adaptable framework that can address all of the different circumstances. Any thoughts, questions? All right, so what to not do? Don't do all the talking. So once you've introduced yourself, really throw it back to them, get them talking. First of all, it's going to be a more meaningful conversation for everybody, but it's that more natural flow to the conversation so that it's not me putting on this production, this little soliloquy sort of, you know, or speech about myself. So have it go back and forth. And really, if you're doing all of the talking, you're talking way too much. If you're doing more than 50% of the talking, you're talking too much. So at some point, even if it's I realize I'm doing all the talking here and I must be nervous. Tell me about yourself. I'd really love to hear about what your role is or what project you're working on, and get them talking, because once you have that, you get information from them, you actively listen to what they say and then respond, ask more questions, and really get them talking. The other thing is, when you are doing your initial introduction, keep it short. It really shouldn't be, it shouldn't be a minute. It shouldn't probably even be 30 seconds. It should really be just that: your name, what your current status is, what you're passionate about, and why you're excited to be talking to them about whatever. And I know that especially in the interviews, in response to that, tell me about yourself. Oh, I've been in interviews where, it's a 30-minute interview and a good 15 minutes are spent with the individual answering that question. And that's way, way, way too long. So keep it nice and short and get them talking. And the other thing, and my individual Ekwal, I don't know what your first name is, but
Elena.
So, you were saying, sometimes you don't know. You don't know what to say. You don't know what's important to them. And I think that the thing that you don't need to know exactly, and because you don't need to have this like super canned speech. So it's going to be somewhat fluid, but you do know what you're good at. You do know what you're interested in. You do know what you're passionate about. I think sometimes the hardest conversations in some of these networking conversations that you have, somebody will ask you, tell me about yourself, or, what type of career are you interested in? And as a student, a lot of people will say, so what are you wanting to do? What are you thinking about doing? Which is, again, another form of asking you to get started with your elevator pitch. And sometimes you don't know. But rather than saying, I don't know, which isn't very helpful for them, nor is it helpful for you, you can say, I'm still exploring a lot of things and have a few undecideds. I know that one of the things I'm really interested in is working for a larger organization, or I'm really interested in working for a company that is committed to improving the environment, or whatever it is. So you don't have to, you're not saying like, I am like 100% focused on this and that's all I want to talk about, but it's okay to say, I'm still juggling and with a few ideas, but here, these are the things that I think are really kind of percolating as the things that I'm really most interested in. Because what happens then is it gives them a hook. Because again, you're starting a conversation. And if you say, I don't know, or I really have no idea, or I know I don't want to do what I'm doing, but I don't know what else, then you're kind of throwing it to them to figure things out for you, or figure out where this conversation is going for you. Whereas if you say, I'm really, what I've found about myself is that, I'm studying marketing, but I'm really passionate about recycling, and I'm trying to figure out a way that I can kind of mirror or blend these two interests together. So then somebody can say, oh, I have a friend of mine works in marketing at the waste management company. You should really talk to her, because there's all sorts of, there's whole careers that involve being marketing and recycling. Or they could say, I don't know anything about on that recycling side, but I do have a friend who works at an advertising agency, and I think that might be a really interesting person for you to, because people are going to want to come back and be helpful and give some information that maybe they can share with you. And so if you can give them something that they can kind of latch on to, like, oh yeah, that seems interesting. I know somebody who does something like that, or I was just talking to somebody. That's the kind of way you want to get the conversation to go. So don't be too vague with the idea that you have to have all the answers. And if you don't have the right answer already, that you have nothing to talk about. You still have interests. You still have things that you're passionate about, and share those sort of things. So any questions? Let me see if anything's in the chat.
Yes, I think one thing, this is Gene Pegler. I'm the director of grad programs. One thing that I've always leaned on a little bit is when I get stuck is to ask them a question. So when they introduce themselves, if they say they're the VP or vice president of UMB Bank, hey, you know what, what did your career trajectory look like to get there? Or, again, trying to get them to talk a little bit about themselves, because all of a sudden when they do that, you'll find some things that you can pull from. Oh, wow, you were this first. Well, how did you get that job? What were the steps to doing that? And so there's ways to kind of create a conversation just in asking a couple simple questions along the way. That's worked well for me throughout my.
100%. And again, anytime you can get them talking about themselves, I think is good. And to be honest, it's more beneficial and educational for you to be involved in those conversations if they're talking, because you know about you. And if you can get them talking about their job, then you're learning about that career path, that organization. And all of that is beneficial. Jean, you said something and it made me think of something. Now, of course, I'm blanking on it.
Yeah, you know, you and I have that happen to us at this point.
What?
You know, I've used kind of, you know, okay, so what does a day in the life look like, or what's your greatest success? Sometimes those are little tricky questions, you know, you got to be a little careful with things like that. But again, trying to get somebody to talk about themselves, talk about an attribute that they is talking about their greatest success. Well, you know, hey, what's happened in the last 5 years? Obviously, there's, you know, if it's banking and finance, there's a lot going on in the world right there. You can pull some things from just topical things from, you know, what's going on in the world. Right? Wow, what do you think about these banks that all of a sudden don't have the proper capital to stay in business and things like that? So
Yeah,
you know, that's the stuff that I just try to read up on. You mentioned do the research. Having just a few research things or a couple questions in your back pocket, I think always is helpful.
I do always tell people before you go to a networking event, do a quick scan of headline news and see what's going on in the world, as well as maybe check on sports. Even if you're not following teams, it's another one where you can start conversations based on just things that are in the news, or incorporate that in. I think also it's good to think about, oftentimes when we think about preparing our pitch, we think about the information that we want to get across, and it's so me focused. And yet there's very few interactions where people really are just interested in your opinion on you. And so I think, you know, putting yourself in the other person's shoes, because you've been in the other person's shoes, but remembering that when you're getting ready to talk about yourself. So we've all been in conversations where somebody they start talking about themselves and you can't even get a word in, and you're kind of thinking, how do I extricate myself from this and move on? And you don't want to be that person. So really think about it from the other person's perspective. And these introductions, they say a lot about what are the things that we choose to talk about. But they also say a lot about our manners, about our graciousness, and so how well we communicate and interact with people, and whether we're consciously or subconsciously evaluating on this. We are evaluating on this, everybody is. And so the person who talks endlessly about themselves, never shows any interest in the other person, doesn't, you know, is talking about things that really doesn't seem relevant to the relationship, that whatever it is between them and me. You know, we're judging, we're saying, you know, whew, monopolizing the conversation, so egocentric, so really try and view every conversation as how would the other person be perceiving this whole interaction. And oftentimes that means shutting up, asking them a question, getting them to talk, and then being truly interested in what they have to say. I think is a good way to approach a lot of these pitches.
Well, you mentioned one of the troubling things about networking. When you do get caught in a situation where it's going on, and maybe it is at a point where you need to extricate yourself from a conversation because it's time to do some other networking. What's the most polite way or ways to kind of to do that?
there's a few things that you can do. So one of the things, so I like to use a little bit of self-effacing humor myself. And so oftentimes I will say, I'm so introverted. I have a hard time with these things. I promised myself I was going to have 5 good conversations here. And as much as I've enjoyed talking to you, I still have to get 4 more conversations in. So can I get your contact information? Maybe we can continue this this conversation later. Or you could say, oh, I can see a friend of mine just walked in the room. Please excuse me. I need to go say hi. Or you can say, oh, I'm getting so hungry. I'm going to go check out the food table and see what they have. Or if there's other people around, you can say something, even if you're not the one that's monopolizing their time, you can say, oh, I really don't want to monopolize your time. There's so many other people for you to chat with. So very nice to meet you. Do you have some contact information? Maybe we can follow up. But then exit. Yeah,
Now,
it happens a lot.
we have an event tomorrow night with Cheers to Careers. If any of you guys use these examples on me, I'll know that I've stayed too long and talked too long. So, but thanks, Tess. That's helpful.
My pleasure. And the other for networking, the other question I get all the time is how do I initiate the conversation? So, there's little pods of people, or maybe there's single people all over the place, but how do you go up and start that conversation? Which seems so simple, and yet I don't know, how many times do you just sort of hover around the edges of a group hoping that someone will notice you and invite you into the conversation, and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. I would say be the person that brings people in. It shows great manners and great graciousness if you see somebody who's maybe struggling a little bit with some of this, because it's tough. But be that person that says, hey, come and chat with us. My name is Tess Serpent. What's your name? And get that conversation going that way. If nobody is chatting with you, either exit immediately, or I would say, just throw yourself in. Just like, if there's a little pod of people, just go up assuming that they want to talk to you. Put your hand in, shake hands, say, hey, my name is Tess. I'm with UMKC. What do you guys do? What are you talking about? And just be bold and throw yourself in there. These are short, polite, quick conversations. Nobody's going to be thinking like, wow, that's really weird that somebody would come up and network with me at a networking event. How strange. People are going to be more likely like, wow, oh, come on, chat with me. Tell me more about what you do here. So be bold, I'd say, is the best way to start those conversations. And do come to the event tomorrow. We'll have adult beverages too.
What
Don't
time
get to
is that?
actively advertise that, but
What time is the event and where?
April, I'm going to leave that to you.
Perfect. I'm actually going to put it in chat right now. It is tomorrow from 5:30 to 7 in Bloch Executive Hall 331 on the 3rd floor. So I just dropped a link into that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Gonna have really good food, guys. And it's casual, so you can come and go as you please.
Must be over 21, all that good knock.
Well, I mean, for adult beverages, yes.
Yes. So
Oh, sorry you can't join, Abby.
what's that?
Well, you'll get done at 6:45 maybe. There's a window there, Abby. You might be online though.
No, I could potentially do that, but I have a 7 o'clock class too, so.
Hey, swing by, have
In a
glass
row.
of something.
It might
and
make your
walk
class
by.
much more enjoyable if
Yeah,
you
you
get
know.
a glass of wine beforehand.
You're
Or
not-
you might
you're-
just fall asleep. which
Or
is
just
what I
gr-
would do.
Or just grab a snack.
I have a habit of doing the first thing on this list here, which is talking too long, or the second thing on the list. So I think I would miss my second class if I did that.
My contact information is here if you wish to reach out to me. Always happy to discuss this or any other career related topic on a one-on-one basis. So drop me an email. You can schedule something through Handshake. You can also just request via email and we can set something up that way too.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm happy to stick around and answer some questions, but like I said, elevator pitches are short. So just a half an hour here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Hope to see you tomorrow. I'll stop sharing.